Hi everyone, I'm Matt. So we're looking at the Epstein situation and how the general public feels. And when I say general public, obviously not over here in the UK, over there in the US. So let's have a look.
Polls show that Americans are paying attention to the recent revelations in the Epstein case. CNN chief data analyst Harry Enton now with what the numbers tell us about how the public and the president's base feel about the story that won't seem to go away.
Interest in the Epstein Files and the Epstein case is sky high, and the American public does not trust what the government is selling them. What are we talking about here? Is the government hiding Epstein's alleged client? Let's get this.
Of course they are. Absolutely, of course they are.
69% of Americans agree that the federal government is, in fact, hiding Epstein's alleged.
There's a list, there is no list. There's some files, there are no files. Even Trump came out, did he, and say that Bill Clinton's going to have a horrible time because of the stuff around Epstein. Then all of a sudden he's saying, yeah, he's still talking about Epstein. No, there's nothing to it. Of course there isn't. And then Trump comes out, Elon Musk comes out and says the reason why you won't see those files is because Trump is in those files. And then he sort of did a 180 on that one.
Client list versus just 6% who say that they are not. And get this, a majority of Republicans and Democrats do in fact agree on this issue that the government is hiding Epstein's alleged client list. You can never get a majority of Republicans and Democrats to agree on anything, but they do agree on this particular issue. And perhaps not so surprisingly, you get a plurality of Democrats and Republicans agreeing that they are dissatisfied with the amount of information that the government has released so far. What are we talking about this? Well, we're talking about, if we look at Republicans and independents who lean Republican, 43% are dissatisfied with the amount of information released so far.
I mean, everyone should be dissatisfied with this. So you've got the guy who was one of the most prevalent human traffickers in the world, with somebody really high profile in the royal family in the UK involved, Prince Andrew, okay? An RIP to the woman in that case. I believe she took her own life, which is sad. But you've got all these people coming out now saying, oh, we found more victims and more victims. If you're finding victims, you're finding perpetrators, surely. But no, absolutely nothing. And now, because of all this, they're saying that they're going to start talking to it's not Jizz. Maxwell. I'll just call it Maxwell. Talking to Maxwell, because she obviously will be in the know about these things. Why do it now? Why not do it back in the day? Surely there would have been, if you give us more information on some of the perpetrators, we'll give you a better deal or cut a deal. Maybe not freedom, but years off your sentence. So it's all strange. And then the way that Epstein supposedly died, and I say supposedly died because I'm not even sure the guy is gone, if I'm honest.
To get this, just 4% of Republicans who are in fact satisfied with the amount of information released so far by the federal government when it comes.
I've been looking at them 4%, if I'm honest.
To the Epstein case. And we look over here on this side of the screen among Democrats. Get this, 60% of Democrats and independent-leaning Democrats are in fact dissatisfied with the amount of information released so far. And get this, just 3% of Democrats are in fact satisfied.
I'm glad that he counted to 3 then, because I'm thinking 3. How do you get to 3? 1. Of course, that's how you do it.
So far with the amount of information released. Now you see this. You see that the plurality of Republicans are dissatisfied. So how is it impacting President Trump's overall approval rating? Republicans who approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing. Get this. In our CNN SSRS poll, it was 86% prior to this whole Epstein saga. Now, it's 88%. In fact, the percentage of Republicans who approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing has actually, if anything, climbed a little bit according to our CNN.
Yeah, but that might not be related to the Epstein case, surely, because end of the day, him coming out, being very vocal in the lead up to his election about Epstein and the people who were on the other side, who could have been entangled in the case, he was very, very vocal about all that. And then now it's, oh, there's nothing to see here. Why are we still talking about Epstein? I'll tell you why we're still talking about Epstein. It's because 2 people went to prison. One person paid off a victim who was a member of the British royal family, and that's it. Nobody else has been indicted in part of this entire trafficking scandal. Why?
And polling. How about Quinnipiac? 87% before this whole Epstein saga started approved of the job that Donald Trump was doing among Republicans. Now it's 90%. So we see agreement between the CNN polling and the Quinnipiac polling. Yes, Republicans are not thrilled with how the government is responding to the Epstein case, but so far they are in fact not taking it out on Donald Trump, at least when it comes to his overall approval rating. Now you might be...
What I will say, and it's nothing related to the Epstein bit, it's a bit distracting, right? And this might have just been me, but right over his left shoulder, you've got 4 screens, and on one of those screens, it's just been playing advertisements. And I didn't realize in America, I mean, I've been to Vegas about 4 times, I've been to Chicago once, so I know it's not mainstream America. Vegas is very separate to everything. But when you watch TV in the US, you realize you guys get absolutely screwed over with adverts compared to the UK. Like in an hour, we might have 3 adverts, about 5 minutes each. You guys just seem to be every 10 minutes as an advert. And looking at that, it's an advert for basically medication every 5 minutes. I do love your medication adverts because there's always a list of side effects, and one of those is always, it might kill you. Yeah, it's just, apologies. That is a complete sidestep from what this is all about, but it was distracting that you've got adverts playing in the background.
Asking yourself, why? Well, I think this nugget gives it all away. Republicans who said the nation's top issue was the Epstein case, get this, 0, 1. One respondent, not 1%, one respondent of Republicans said that the nation's top issue was in fact the Epstein case. What we're dealing with is a public that is very much dissatisfied.
I don't think it's a top issue in America, I'll be honest, and I'm not even in America, but when you've got everything that's going on with ICE and immigration at the minute, you've got fentanyl, ICE zombies on basically in every town, in every city. You've got people, cost of living going absolutely through the roof. You've got the West putting itself into European conflicts at the minute. So I can imagine that it's not top of the list, but it's damn important because there's some guilty people out there that are still walking around free.
Satisfied with how the government is responding so far to the Epstein case. A lot of folks, both on the right and the left, do in fact believe that the government is hiding Epstein's alleged client list, but yet when it comes to his approval rating, Donald Trump's approval rating with the Republican base, so far they're sticking with him because at this point, even if they believe the government is potentially hiding something, they don't think it's all that important.
It is, of course, the story that President Trump just can't seem to shake as the calls grow louder from both the public and across the aisle for the Department of Justice to release more information in the Jeffrey Epstein case. Over the weekend, Mr. Trump calling the case the, quote, Jeffrey Epstein hoax, blaming Democrats and what he calls troublemakers for the controversy. Meantime, the growing number of lawmakers demanding action on a resolution co-sponsored by Kentucky Republican Thomas Massie and California progressive Ro Khanna. That push would force the full House to vote, yes or no, on releasing the Epstein case files. Among the co-signers, 16 lawmakers who typically would not agree on, frankly, much of anything, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Marjorie Taylor Greene. Another co-signer, Republican Tim Burch of Tennessee.
I mean, I think one thing that would unite a lot of people from both sides is something like this. There's unless you're directly involved at some level or got a reason to, I don't see why anybody on both sides wouldn't want more transparency around the Epstein case and the files.
He says the recent decision by the Trump administration to try to unseal grand jury testimony is just the beginning.
On my bill to release the Epstein Files, not only do I have Republican Thomas Massie, I got Marjorie Taylor Greene, I got Lauren Boebert, I got Tim Buttigieg.
I applaud the president for wanting to release those files. I think it's a good start. I caution America, though, if we need to have some sort of way to filter out the innocents in these things.
I agree. I think what he's talking about there is, and it probably will cut into what he's talking about, not everybody who was involved with Epstein at some level is guilty of trafficking. I mean, he would host certain parties at the island, and I'm not sure that every single party was a sex trafficking party. Not everybody that he was involved with would have been, sexually deviant enough to actually be involved in trafficking. So if names appear in files, it still means that you've got to understand whether just because they had an association with him doesn't mean they're guilty. It's the same with anybody. You might have somebody in your family who's a third cousin or something who might have committed a serious crime. You know them and you've spoke to them, but it doesn't mean that you're complicit in the crimes, does it? So, yeah, I think you've just got to be careful that names don't just get released and then all of a sudden they're entangled as, oh, well, you had dealings with Epstein, so you must be guilty.
Democrats really leaning into this moment as a way to needle the president after 6 months of a presidency which has largely dismantled any opposition attempting to stand in Trump's way.
So the president blaming Democrats for this disaster, Jake, is like that CEO that got caught on camera blaming Coldplay, okay? Like this.
Yeah, that was hilarious. I mean, I think I'm sick of seeing it on LinkedIn and things like that because I think it was just a guy who got caught cheating on his wife at a concert. Yes, it was very public, but oh god, the amount of times that people have recycled that on LinkedIn and then put some sort of inspirational message on it, give over. Just stop. But he come out, didn't he? I'm not sure if it was him or whether there was just grumblings or just the internet just doing what the internet does. But apparently he said he was gonna sue Coldplay because his image was caught on the camera and it's gone viral. It's like, sorry, but don't take your missus to a concert where you could get, when I say your missus, I mean your mistress, to a concert where you could get caught on camera for millions to see. Just don't do it. Don't blame Coldplay for your bad choices.
Is his making.
Blame Coldplay for their bad music sometimes.
It all comes back to the Kiss Camp, but we're going to hold that for a little bit later in the show. Joining me now to discuss, Isaac Dover, CNN senior reporter, Sarah Fisher, CNN media analyst, and Michael Warren, senior editor at The Dispatch. Good to see all of you bright and early on this Monday morning. Isaac, when we start with these efforts that we're seeing here, these bipartisan efforts in the House, there's the question of whether or not you can get enough yes votes. There's also the question of what does this actually do?
Yeah, and this is something that will take time, and time may not be in favor of those who want this to go away. Even if the grand jury testimony is released, that could take weeks, it could take longer, and all along the way we have just conversations about this, questions about it, and it's clearly not going the way that some people want it to, even as the president has tried to say stop talking about this and tell his allies in politics and conservative media to stop talking about it. I mean, I was really struck by...
I mean, you can't say stop talking about it. I mean, are you going to tell the victims to stop talking about it? If that's a bad message, stop talking about it. No. But you do your damn job and put it out there and make sure that people who are complicit in all of this, they get their comeuppance, because there's still guilty people out there.
Last night, Mike Johnson was on with Mark Levin, the conservative host, and said that he was agreeing that we can't waste our time on Epstein and other stuff going on here. That's what Levin was saying.
Imagine saying that to the victims. Sorry, but we can't spend time on it. Can't spend time on this case. Sorry, we've just got more important things to do. Suck it up. Get on with your life. What a terrible, terrible message to say to the victims. And the victims of anybody out there that is being trafficked or being exploited, who might want to come forward and report these things, that the government at the highest level will say, just get on with it. Stop talking about it. That sends a terrible message.
Johnson was agreeing. This was Johnson just last Tuesday. He said, it's a very delicate subject, but we should put everything out there and let the people decide it. That's the pick.
Not sure you'd let the general public decide, to be honest. The general public, what's that quote from Men in Black? A person could be smart, intelligent, and reasoned, but people can be fearful idiots, basically. It's not what Tommy Lee Jones said. But yeah, I see the logic in it. That a person, you can reason with a person, but the mob will always just be unreason. You can't reason with a mob. So I wouldn't let the general public decide.
That people who have really engaged in this conspiracy for years find themselves in here. They've talked it up. They've said that there's more stuff, and now that the
Question. I'm sorry, I keep pausing it a lot. I know, but that's the whole point of me. Just otherwise, it'd just been me watching the news on it. But why are they all smiling like idiots, holding the files up? I'm not saying smile like idiots. That's the wrong term. It's just like mad Cheshire grin smiles holding these files up. And I think it might be, yes, we're doing something with this, and there might be a sense of pride. But at the end of the day, those files contain some pretty explicit details of some pretty harrowing cases of abuse, no doubt. So I'm not sure I'd be smiling as much as they are in that picture.
the president is there saying, going in,
His image looks, pretty much on point.
saying that he.
But then the woman behind him was smiling. Yeah, there's a couple of them there.
Cash Patel and all the rest. They have to figure out how they're going to say
You know what I mean?
that there is not more stuff to release.
Isaac points out, you point out an important point, right? That there is still potentially weeks to come just because of the calendar of all things. And to that point, Michael, as we look at where things stand, despite all of these efforts and maybe distraction with other stories or, simply the president trying to dictate by Truth Social post, it's remarkable that none of that seems to be working.
It is that you would think all of the things that that Donald Trump's supporters have been maybe at odds with or in contradiction or some sort of cognitive dissonance with Donald Trump, he's been able to overcome that. This is different, I think, in some ways, partly because Donald Trump is at this point a lame duck president. There's no other election for him to run in, and I think a lot of people are thinking about what happens after
There's a hell of a lot of pictures with Trump and Epstein.
he's gone. It's also something that's really become sort of a core tenet, almost a quasi-religious belief among a certain portion, a very vocal portion of his base, and that's not so easy to wave away. Look, I think there are a lot of people taking advantage, say on the Democratic side, of that cognitive dissonance and trying to sort of poke fun at this, but.
I don't know. Can you imagine somebody as high profile as Trump, who you're in your 80s now, it's probably your last chance at the presidency. You've been 2 times president. Has that ever happened before? I don't know. Would it be magic if he just came out and said, look, I'm going to sit here and tell you all the truth, come what may? That'd be magic, wouldn't it, from your leaders? What a world we'd live in if that was the case.
We're also getting in kind of a dangerous territory here where the conspiracy theories begin to, you start making fun, you start sort of poking and saying, hey, look at this contradiction. And then you start sort of feeding into those same conspiracy theories that there's something here. The basic facts of the case are already out there. I have some questions about specifically about Jeffrey Epstein's 2008 plea deal with the Department of Justice. That's something that would be interesting, but the sort of more titillating aspects of this, we know what the story is. We know what he did. We know what Ghislaine Maxwell did. She's in jail right now because of it.
I mean, why is no one talking to her? Why is no one going in and saying, right, we want every bit of information that you've got? Maybe they already have it. I don't know. Maybe there's a case being built in the background. I don't know.
Not much more there, but these politicians can't help themselves in playing into it. And I think it's a real problem on both sides of the aisle here.
Sarah, somewhat to that point, it is really something how this is gaining steam on a much broader or with a much broader audience, right, than where it initially began. In fact, my colleague.
I mean, we're not even in. I'm in the UK, so and it's pretty well spoken about over here. The Epstein case. I can imagine it's a global thing at the minute. All eyes on American politics, on American justice system, on something that's got. I mean, probably in the UK a little bit more because of what happened with Prince Andrew being involved in these things. But still, I reckon this is a global thing. I reckon you can reach out to anywhere in the world and they'll say, yes, we know about Epstein, we know about the case. I think it's because there's millions of pictures going around there at the minute, like the one that was just shown with Trump and Epstein, and supposed files that exist but that no longer doesn't, with the president that says, stop talking about it, why are you still talking about this? And the message coming out, just get on with it, just crack on with your lives, whilst there's still guilty people knocking around and victims who have not been served justice.
Brian Selter pointing out that a search of Epstein's name on YouTube filtered only to show videos uploaded in the last week found more than 40 with more than 1 million views each, a number of them featuring late-night TV hosts roasting Trump. But the fact that this has found such a broader audience and has some staying power also speaks to the narrative in many ways.
Absolutely. So when you take a look at the issue that's at the core of the Epstein
God, to have 1 million views one day.
case, there's actually two. One is child exploitation, which has always been such an issue on the right and amongst Trump's base. And then the other is deep state cover-up, right? Kash Patel, Dan Bongino, ahead of entering the FBI, a big rallying cry was the deep state, the government is trying to cover this up. And so this was a core case for the MAGA right. And how this has evolved is Democrats are now seizing on this issue because, to Michael's point, when there's a lack of information or it looks like there's information being covered up, that's the best way for conspiracies to fester. And
yeah, it's the is it the chimp paradox? It's the part of the brain. So if you've got a little bit of information but not a lot, you'll start filling the gaps. It's like somebody, like if the police are walking to your door, right? You start filling straight away. It's like, what's happened? Is somebody been injured? Somebody been hurt? Somebody been killed? Something like that. And it's like, am I in trouble for something? Blah. And then you start filling in everything. You don't know why the police are walking towards your door. It could just be that they're going door to door doing awareness about burglaries in the area. But you start filling in everything. And it's the chip paradox. You start filling in all those gaps with what could be. And it's the same with conspiracies. You give a little bit of information out there, but you don't give enough. People start filling in the gaps, and that's where conspiracies are born. She's right.
Democrats are seizing on that opportunity, seizing on some of these conspiracies to try to put pressure on the president. This has now then created a situation where this
And I probably explained the chip paradox really badly there, but there's a book about it.
topic, this story, is hot on both sides of the political aisle. Both sides have something to politically gain from it. And so that's why, in part, it's becoming so viral. I also think that this is one of those things where every time Donald Trump or an ally tries to, fan the flames and say there's nothing to see here, it motivates people to say, hey, wait a minute, I think there is something to see here. And so I don't think that this is going away from the news cycle anytime soon. And just to the point at the top about this lingering, Isaac was saying this, you have Congress coming back to vote if they were to do something, Ro Khanna and Massey, in September. We are still in July, Erica, so this is like 6 to 8 weeks where this is going to continue to build up until Congress, if they do, can take any action on it.
Yeah, so interesting segment. I honestly think that something needs to come of this. It can't just be another one of those JFK, Martin Luther King, 9/11, conspiracies that we talk about in 20 years' time, because nothing gets released, and it's like, oh, maybe one day they'll release the files in 50 years when everyone's dead. It's like, I'm sorry, but we can't have that right now. We can't have it because the victims are still here, and there's people that need to be served justice effectively. So let me know what you think on the whole thing. It's big in the UK. I reckon it's global. It's not just America that's got all eyes on this at the minute. Because I think it was on Asmongold. I was watching because he was very vocal and he kept watching. He's like, I'm going to keep this in the public until, the truth comes out. I'm not sure he can keep that up, to be honest. But I think there was a quote on there, someone said, if they can get away with covering this up, they can get away with anything, and it's true. And we shouldn't let governments get away with covering things up. The UK has got massive problems at the moment, but yeah, I think this in America, it's just going to show that if nothing comes of this, then you can just basically cover anything up at the highest level as long as you've got the right people involved in the crime. So anyway, rant over. Let me know what you think. You take care. I'll see you on the next one.